It's been a fascinating day in the Berg as the Steelers make some interesting, some strange, and not so good cuts to the roster as they move towards the cut deadline and roster publishing deadline of 4 p.m. today. Hello, Steeler Nation. Welcome to the latest episode of your Pittsburgh Steelers Syndicate with me, your host, Britsburgh, Owen, speaking to you live here in the UK. Well, guys, it's been a busy day, a fascinating day, a day that I have been glued to Twitter most of the day, apart from when I've been driving, obviously, because I wouldn't do that. It's been pretty amazing. I've made a fair few videos. I've released lots of content on my own channel, Britsburgh, Owen, as well. It's been a pretty just non-stop breathless day, looking at the cuts, looking at who's coming, who's going, and what the Steelers roster is going to look like for the 2022 NFL season. So let's get started, shall we, with the cuts. Now, the Steelers released a list which Jenna Harner tweeted out today of the main cuts that have been made. There are some missing from this, which I will come on to shortly. So defensive backs that have been cut: Elijah Riley, the kid who was just recently claimed off waivers from the New York Jets, Chris Steele, the UDFA, and Lyndon Stevens, the former Seattle Seahawk. Now, Chris Steele is a bit of a disappointment for me. I thought that the USC Trojan, Chris Steele, had a good camp and had possibly done enough to displace James Pierre from the 53-man roster. However, it now appears that he has not, and he has been cut. On the defensive line, while the Bash brothers, Carlos and Khalil Davis, have both been cut. The cutting of Carlos Davis slightly surprises me, especially given the lack of fitness of Montravius Adams. The likelihood possibly could be that Carlos Davis, in my opinion, will make his way back to the practice squad, as will Henry Mondeau as well. Donovan Jeter, I think, will be gone. The outside linebackers that have been cut, and the linebackers full stop that have been cut, are Rondell Carter, who was signed very recently, Buddy Johnson, Hamilcar Rashid, who was apparently having the audition of his life on Saturday, ready for the to become the outside linebacker number 3. It now appears that he failed that audition and has been cut. Delonte Scott and James Wouters. Now, in addition to this, the Steelers have also made a trade today. The Steelers have traded for Malik Reed, who is a fourth-year outside linebacker with 34 career starts and 15 sacks. There's the depth the Steelers badly needed at the position behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. That is tweeted out by ESPN's very own Brooke Pryor. Reed comes to the Steelers with a 7th-round pick for a 6th-round pick given to Denver in return for Reed. Reed, I think, will be outside linebacker number 3 and Tushka outside linebacker number 4 behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Now, heading back to that list, another surprise name for me on that list is Buddy Johnson. Buddy Johnson, who was the 4th-round pick out of Texas A&M in the 2021 draft, someone who the Steelers had very high hopes for. He was seen as being a thumper, very much in the mold of a Vince Williams. However, he has really struggled in camp and also pre-season and has looked out of place. I think there's a possibility that Johnson could well make it back to the practice squad for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In addition to that, Delonte Scott is a bit of a surprise. Delonte Scott, who I'd heard a lot of positive things about coming out of camp, and I think he had a sack as well, I think I recollect, on Saturday. Scott could well make it back onto the practice squad. He is another possible candidate for that if he doesn't get picked up by someone else. Now heading to the offensive line, William Dunkel, Adrian, who was just recently, Chaz Green, John Legloo, Ryan McCollum, the center, who was just recently signed as well. Now, the one name that stands out there for me, and really is a bit of a surprise for me, and has surprised many, including Sports Illustrated's very own Noah Strackbean. Go and give Noah's stuff on Sports Illustrated a look. He is a quality writer about the Steelers. John Legloo is a quality offensive lineman. Well, he's a quality depth piece, shall we say. He can play all along the offensive line and presents great flexibility for whatever team has him. He can play tackle, he can play guard. And what surprises me is the fact that, in my opinion, Legloo is a better guard than Kendrick Green. Green, who stank the joint out this offseason and stank it out in the preseason, really is lucky to retain his place on the team. Legloo, I think, would have been a much better bet than Kendrick Green. There is, of course, that possibility Legloo could make his way back to the practice squad. Running back Max Berigi is gone. Not a surprise there. Tight ends Kevin Radar and Jace Sternberger have been cut. Kevin Radar, who is an outstanding blocker as a tight end, but obviously not so good in the receiving game, he could well make his way back onto the practice squad. Now, the wide receivers, 3 wide receivers in what was a very deep wide receiver room, have been cut. It is anticipated, however, that Calvin Austin III will make his way onto the injured reserve due to the fact he has not played a single minute of preseason football and has missed an awful lot of training with that foot injury that he sustained during training camp. The surprise names there are Tyler Vaughn and Cody White. Cody White, who spent some time on the active roster at the end of last season, many people thought was a good receiver and potentially could get better. The other name that I think really stands out is someone who many Steeler fans feel has had a very good preseason, and that is Tyler Vaughn. Vaughn, of course, caught that game-winning touchdown pass from Kenny Pickett in the first game against the Seattle Seahawks at Acrisure Stadium. And there he is, catching that game-winning touchdown pass and diving into the end zone. Vaughn's has looked very sure-handed. He's looked good at beating his man. He's looked good at running his routes. He's looked good, had good solid hands as well. So to see Vaughn's being cut is somewhat of a surprise. This probably means that Steven Sims and Miles Boykin make the roster ahead of him. The 6 wide receivers they will probably take will be Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Gunnar Olszewski, Miles Boykin, and Steven Sims, with Calvin Austin going on IR. Vaughn's, I think they will try to sneak back onto the practice squad. However, due to the fact there are a number of very wide receiver needy teams around the NFL, like the Baltimore Ravens, like the Chicago Bears, like the Atlanta Falcons, I could well see one of those teams move and claim Vaughn's from our practice squad, which would be a big loss for the Steelers, in my opinion. Now, also on that list is defensive back Carlins Patel, who has been waived injured after he had surgery. Disappointing for Patel, who was apparently showing promise during the training camp this season. Also cut is Anthony Mcfarland. Now, Tommy Jaggi and a number of other NFL insiders like Tom Pelissero, like Ian Rappaport, like Garofalo, loads of people have tweeted out that McFarland has been cut. Tommy Jaggi of Steel Curtain said, "I'm not surprised to see Anthony McFarland get cut, but Benny Snell would have been my choice to go. Snell offers practically nothing on offense. I'm sure it's his ability to play special teams that has ultimately kept him around." Now, I 100% agree with Jaggi's sentiment. Sometimes I don't agree with what Tommy Jaggi says, but on this occasion, I do actually fully agree with what he's saying. Benny Snell offers absolutely nothing as a running back. He's slow. He can't see gaps. He can't bounce outside. His receiving is fairly poor, and yet he makes the team just because of his special teams ability, much in the same way that Derek Watt does. And I'll come on to Derek Watt shortly. But McFarland, I think, offers far more as a running back to this team. He's the change of pace back we haven't got. He's now running straight lines, seeing gaps, and has had a very promising preseason and training camp. I think it is exceptionally disappointing that the Pittsburgh Steelers have chosen to keep someone as awful and as trashy as Benny Snell over someone like Ant McFarland. I think this is a massive, huge mistake, and I hope that Snell is cut at some point during the season and replaced by McFarland. The other player that has been cut, who I'm not surprised to see go, is Justin Lane. Justin Lane, who was a 3rd-round pick. Now, in Kevin Colbert's words, he expects all for the first 3 round picks to contribute to the starting team, something Lane has singularly failed to do throughout his time in Pittsburgh. He's often struggled. He's often looked out of place. He has often looked a very poor cornerback, something he wasn't in college. He certainly seemed to have struggled to fit into the Steelers' scheme in the secondary, and I'm not surprised to see that Justin Lane has been cut. Well, also obviously saving his place is Derek Watt, yet again, someone who had only 7 tackles on special teams last year, and for me, gets paid $4.7 million for doing what? Keeping his brother happy? That seems to be it. I personally think it's a disgrace that Derek Watt has kept his place on this team, as he contributes absolutely nothing to the Pittsburgh Steelers of worth, especially when you consider the likes of Warren, the likes of Benny Snell, the likes of Miles Boykin, Miles Killebrew, Gunnar Olszewski, James Pierre, all massively contribute on special teams and are included mainly on the roster because of their special teams ability. To keep Watt as a fullback who does not play fullback for the Pittsburgh Steelers just because of his special teams ability, in my opinion, is a massive waste of a roster spot. Feel free to disagree with me if you want in the comments, but that's my opinion. Well, guys, that's what I've found out so far about the cuts. I'll be back at some point to confirm those and to go over the 53-man roster. Thank you for watching Pittsburgh Steelers Syndicate, and let's finish this, as we always do, with "Here we go, Steelers. Come on!"